Welcome to Don't Chuck It Up, the podcast where we help students and families navigate the wild journey of the college search and applying to colleges without breaking a sweat. I'm your host, Chuck, and today we are super excited to have a guest on our show. I would like to welcome to the Don't Chuck It Up podcast, Dr. Andrea Malkin Brenner. Andrea, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you joining the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me, Chuck.
Well, Dr. Andrea Malkin Brenner, she is an accomplished author, creator of the Talking Colleges card. She's also a featured speaker. I was checking out your website just earlier today, and you've got already speaking engagements all the way through 2025. You are a busy lady. I'm excited that I will hopefully be able to see you during a couple of different conferences. I plan to be at the IECA National Conference in May in Detroit, and then back in Detroit. You're doing Detroit a lot next year at the NACAC Annual Conference as well. So that's exciting. So for those of you who would like to learn more about Dr. Andrea Malkin Brenner, I want to tell you right now, check out her website, ambrenner.com. Again, thanks for being here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you are doing right now?
Sure, absolutely. So I was a college professor for 25 years. I'm a trained sociologist. I have a doctorate in sociology. I was a sociology professor at American University in D.C. I live right outside of D.C. I was there for 25 years, 20 years as a faculty member, and I was studying sociology of the first-year student. And so when AU decided to create a first-year experience course, I was the natural person to create it. So of my 25 years, 20 years I was in the classroom. The last 5, I moved into an administrative role and started from scratch, built a program, and that program is a mandatory full-year program today. Left AU in 2018 to write a book with a colleague called How to College, and we have been pretty blessed that has been picked up by many, many schools, high schools and colleges across the country. And I speak myself at high schools and colleges really throughout the U.S., both public and private schools. And one of the conversations I speak to a lot of parent groups, and a lot of the feedback was, my favorite part of your book are the discussion prompts. We start talking about them around the dinner table, etc. We want more. And so I thought, I know that I like to use discussion prompts around my Thanksgiving table. I know there's a bar near me that uses them, has them there. They're great on first dates. And I thought, this is great. I wonder if they exist in this transition to college space, and did some research, realized that they didn't. So, I trademarked them and created the Talking College brand. We now have 5 card decks out, 2 more in the works, and they're all discussion prompts all about the transition.
And I will tell you that I have an OG deck. I have one of the original ones that came out, and these have been great for me to work with some of my students in person, because sometimes students and parents don't know how to talk about some of the elements of college. For many parents, it was such a long time ago that they're like, well, this is what happened with me. And while the situation is very different for their kids, and the deck really has a lot of different topics, from everything from envisioning your future to paying for college basics, family expectations, just knowledge. There's a whole lot of vocab in here. What most students and parents don't realize is that college is chock full of vocabulary. So this is a great way to talk about those. Roommates and friendships, boundaries. There's just so many topics in here. And I think it's a really great way to inspire students and parents to have that conversation about college. And you said it's also available in Spanish as well?
It's also available in Spanish. And I'm working with a group of educators from Harvard Grad School of Education to create a Mandarin deck right now for Chinese international students. So that's exciting. That'll be out in 2025. And thank you for the compliment. I mean, one of the things I'm most proud of with every one of these card decks is that they're very inclusive. They work for parents who went to college 30 years ago, and for first-gen students whose parents have not been to college. So the language is really all first-gen friendly. And they're easy conversations. I love to tell students and parents, starting early junior year, you can start talking college, but not every night. Pick a night around the dinner table, a Tuesday night, we're going to talk college for a few hours, pull some of these cards and go. I actually have families who tell me that they keep a deck in their glove box of their car. So when they have their
Oh,
kids locked in the car with them, they can actually have, and some of the conversations are quick and easy, talking about healthcare, what is a copay, what is HIPAA.
right.
But others are, very familial driven. They're not answers that anyone else can give about, paying for college, about boundaries and consent, about even spirituality, learning styles, etc. And those are lengthier conversations that families can have.
Absolutely. I think you really have set up students and parents well to have some of those very difficult conversations that parents often struggle with, especially right before going off to college, when you have the infamous drug, sex, and alcohol talk. It can get a little challenging at times. So why not have a deck of cards that inspires your conversation and helps lead that conversation? And there are questions on there that are both student directed, but also parent directed, so the parents can share their opinion on a certain topic.
You are right. And I'll tell you a little story about that because I wish I had created that from the get go. But the first deck of cards, the first draft of it, we focus grouped to families, and the parents said, "Great, they all work," and the students said, "I don't love this because they're lectures." Because we had not delineated parents lead this conversation, students lead this conversation. And so with the next run, we changed that and it's become, widely accepted. And the students are able to have, conversations as a young adult, as they're going to be having in college. And they're going to be interacting. It's not all a parent lecture as it may have been when they were growing up.
Absolutely. And so you have the version in Spanish. What other decks are currently available for families?
We have one called Talking College, College Ready. That's for neurodiverse kids heading to college. And includes, and that actually, the content came from a really incredible advisory board from experts across the country. So that's for students who have ASD, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, and social anxiety. It touches on all of those. We have one for like 10th, 11th grade families called Talking College Campus Visits. That's
Oh, yeah.
insider tips and discussion prompts about, what you're really looking for when you go on a college tour. We have the original one for students and parents in English and Spanish. As I mentioned, it's coming out in Mandarin. We have one called Talking College Peer Leaders. That's actually for colleges that are used by RAs and orientation leaders. So it's for student leaders leading conversations with first-year students. And then my newest one that's in the works, I'm just about getting close to tackling my advisory board that will hopefully also be out in 2025. It's for LGBTQ plus high school students looking for inclusive college experiences.
That's always a challenging conversation to have, and one that is forever changing. So it's going to be, that one's probably going to need to get updated every now
Yes,
and then.
exactly. How do you keep it evergreen? You're absolutely right.
Right. Absolutely. I love the idea that you have the one on campus visits. I did a whole episode helping families navigate. Okay, what do you do before? What do you do during? What do you do after? I think they just are so used to seeing the movies and saying, well, you just show up and you go on a tour and that's kind of the end of that. And I'm like, well, no, there's way more to a campus visit than just showing up and looking around.
It's great. And you can get so much more bang for your buck if you're, investing in attending, a weekend or, traveling to a college. The more research you do in advance, I think families don't realize you can see a chemistry lab if you plan in advance,
Yes.
or sit in a class, or meet with learning disability support, or meet with a
Yeah.
coach. There really are ways that you can dig in and make it your own experience, not just show up at the info session, because I think colleges start to blend together.
Tell me about it. As an independent educational consultant, I've toured 222 different colleges so
Wow.
far in 30 different states, and people go, how do you keep them all organized in your head? For me, they at least stand out. There's a little bit of uniqueness in each one, but for parents, when they say, oh, we're going to go off on a road trip and visit 5 or 6 colleges in a week, I'm going, you and your kid are just not, it's going to be hard to keep track of everything that way.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah, my favorite visit advice is I tell families, if you're going the night before because you have to travel far and stay in a hotel, go do a nighttime walk around drive through of the college campus. I know a lot of parents are concerned about campus safety, and what better way than to see the campus at night rather than, okay, you show up at 10 a.m. for the info session and you do the tour. Well, you've seen the campus in broad daylight. Of course, it's going to look amazing. How does it look at nighttime? That's one of my tips that I always give for
I
families.
love that. Yep, absolutely.
And these were all inspired by your co-authored book, How to College,
Yeah.
uh, What to Know Before You Go and When You're There. This is a resource that is really, really helpful, especially for parents and students that it's maybe the first kid out the door, or the parents didn't go to college, or you have a student that doesn't want to ask questions and they need to kind of figure it out on their own.
Right.
There's chapters in here about everything that will at least get them started figuring out what to ask and what resources on campus are available to them. So I
Right.
I recommend it to everyone that I talk about because it is
Oh,
a one-stop shop book for parents and families that are and students that are confused about, okay, so we figured out where we're going to college. Now what? I'm like, you need a manual. This is kind of like the owner's manual of how to survive
sure.
college.
I think that's great, and it's a misconception that once the student's in, you're done. I think
Right.
that's where the journey starts. You know, that acceptance letter doesn't come with lifelong skills and adulting. Indeed, you got to figure out what you don't know yet, what you need to learn, and then the resources that you're going to be met with on on your college campus.
Yeah, and you don't want to do what my father told me, which is, you'll figure it out. Like that was his advice. Now, he did not go to a traditional college. He was doing commuting from home and kind of doing independent education. So he didn't know about college. And his advice, literally to me, because he had no advice, was, you'll figure it out. This book will stop you from having to do that. Just
Appreciate
figure
it.
it out.
And I,
And I
and
was
I
like,
and I will say, there are a lot of decent books out there about the
oh
transition to
yeah.
college, college guides for sure. It's not the only one, but it is unique that it was written by two college professors who have both taught. My colleague Lara Schwartz and I have taught, tens of thousands of first year students. And we really started where we looked at where students were failing to thrive, not failing, but failing to thrive academically, psychosocially, with adulting skills, independent living skills, etc. And then we started working backwards and figuring out how to build those skills in high school.
I wholeheartedly agree. As someone who's been a college administrator myself, and the kids come into my office just clueless and they feel like they should know the answer, but where would have they ever been taught some of these skills? It's a wonderful resource. So I'm really appreciative of you co-authoring the book and then creating the cards. Have you ever thought about making an app for the cards? If
It's
the
interesting. That is probably the most asked question is, when is this going to be on my phone? And we have focus group that, and the feedback we're getting from parents. So right as of now, no. And the reasoning is, the feedback we're getting is we have tech-free, phone-free dinner tables, and 90% of these conversations are happening at the dinner table. And so we're going to go old school. And I also think there is something very one and done about a card deck. You can actually see all of these cards. I'm going to go through 250 of them, but
right,
then once you've
it's a
discussed
stack.
them, exactly, they go in the done pile. And there is something I think I think there's something psychological that you see that pile shrinking and you realize I'm getting closer to being ready.
Very true. It's almost like a course because if you get through all the cards, you kind of have gone through college 101 in a way before you head off to college itself. That's awesome. So I'm curious, what I ask my students and my parents all the time is, so what was your educational journey? Let's go all the way back. As I tell my parents, picture
Sure.
it, you're back in high school. Where did you go to high school and what were you like in high school? What was that experience for you?
Absolutely. I went to high school in New Jersey, a big public high school, in Westfield, New Jersey, and had the luck of taking a sociology class my senior year. I was very lucky that I know not every school offers this, and I just fell in love with the discipline. Got to college. I went to Brandeis University outside of Boston. Knew I wanted to do something having to do with social science or education, and double majored in sociology and education. Fell absolutely in love with it. I was lucky enough to be a student of Maury Schwartz and Maury Stein of Tuesdays with Maury.
Oh, yeah.
And took the famous birth and death course, which then I taught for many years at American University, where I was a professor. I graduated with a dual degree, bachelor's degree in sociology and education. Went on to get a master's from Boston College in higher ed administration, focusing on writing curriculum, equitable education, etc. But always kind of came back to my roots of sociology, and then decided to go for it, and got a PhD from AU and was lucky enough to be hired there. And really, I spent 25 years there and truly enjoyed it.
That's awesome. So what are some things that you would share with students listening right now? So a lot of my listeners are high school students who are just starting the college process, or maybe they just finished applications. We're recording this in November, so the big November 1st deadline just passed. What are some tips of advice that you would give to current high school students?
Sure. Well, first, I would say the journey is not over when you get in. There really is work that you can do. And if you think about it, I love to say this to students, if you think about it, you would never expect to be great at a trumpet if you didn't practice, right? Or soccer, or, studying for a test. Preparation is absolutely a requirement for success. And we can say the same thing about that transition to college. There's no way that you would know how to be a college student.
Yeah.
I also think that students have a misconception that middle school was really a bigger elementary and high school was really
Yeah.
bigger middle school. So shouldn't college therefore be a bigger high school? And in fact, it's not. It's really more run like a business than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a totally new type of culture. And you do need to practice some of those skills and learn some of that language. Just like if you were going to a foreign country, you would learn some basic words. And so, my favorite exercise that I offer to families I work with, and this is a great advice for students and parents alike, is sit together, a parent and their student at their kitchen table, set a timer for 15 minutes. Each one has a piece of paper and a pen. They don't look at each other. And for 15 minutes, each one writes just nonstop they're making a list. The student is writing everything they think they need to learn before they go to college. The parent is writing everything they would like to see their student learn before they go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Then take a break, come back together, could be a day later, a week later, and compare your lists, create a third list that is a combo list, and then actually set some time aside to figure out who's going to do the teaching. And I would advise parents, you do not always have to be the teacher. It's probably a good idea not to always be the teacher, but look for neighbors, for uncles, for older siblings, for friends, teachers, mentors who can help. And those might be, knife skills in the kitchen. They might be, professional email skills. Or basic budgeting skills, whatever those skills might be or that the student is lacking. It's a great place to start. You can start that as early as junior year and slowly start building those skills. Every student is different. So I would say research the college that you're going to once you get in. And one of the silver linings of COVID is that everything is now online.
Very true.
List of student groups, every resource the counseling center offers, it's all available online. So once you figured out where you're going to go to college, I would say, start doing a deep dive, figuring out those resources, reaching out to a club leader of a club you're interested in joining, saying, hey, I'm an incoming student. When are auditions for the a cappella group, or when is the first meeting for the climbing team, whatever it might be. So that's my student advice. For sure. And then for parents, I was going to say for parents, I don't know if you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
So for parents, I would say, take a breath. It's going to be fine. And also remember that you need to be shifting from the role of college parent, where you have, in many situations, especially with kids who do have some learning challenges, you have been your kid's advocate, as you should have been. In their school system. But college is a different beast, and you're not playing that role anymore. But that doesn't mean that your teen is going from dependent to independent overnight. What we want to do is try to shift parents, have parents step back, but encourage them to push their students towards campus resources.
Mhm.
So maybe mom is not the first text anymore, but in fact, they know how to reach out. And I love to tell parents, especially parents of first-year students, when you get that text that says, the heat's not working in my dorm room, don't call Residence Life. Push it back on your kid. Who are you supposed to contact if something's broken? Let them figure that out and then let them fill out those forms. And it's hard sometimes because as parents, we're great fixers. We do it really well, and we've been doing
Absolutely.
it for many years. But it's an opportunity for us to help our kids step up as we step back.
I can't agree more. I always say, as a college counselor, my job is to help students move from a state of dependence on their parents to a state of independence to navigate where are the resources on campus. And a lot of resources from colleges have said that connect with those offices while you're doing a campus visit and find out, we've seen that students are more likely to use the counseling office if they physically know where it is. So as you're planning to head off to college, make sure you know where those resources are on campus. Parents should still have those emergency numbers if they need to call Residence Life, but I 100% agree with you. The student needs to do the ask first, because the student is the one that's on the campus and the student is getting impacted by the situation directly. And that's going to be a better result than mom or dad jumping in the car or flying on a plane to try and come there and fix it themselves.
Exactly.
Dad's grabbing the wrench like, I'll come fix the heat. And like, no, stay home.
That works. Right. Exactly.
Well, wonderful. I really appreciate all this great advice that you've shared with our listeners. I can't tell you how much this means to me for having you on the podcast today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the Don't Chuck It Up audience?
I would just tell families, you got this. It's okay. Doesn't matter if you've been to college on your own, parents, or if you went to college 30 years ago. Things are different today, and things are very different in a post-COVID era. But the resources are there. When you drop your kid off at college and your student is walking away from you, I think a parent often thinks, I remember the first time they couldn't make it through the sleepover because, it was too scary, or they were the last kid in the class to learn how to tie their shoe. The good news is that your student is being met on the college campus by experts in the first year experience and the second year experience, and they're waiting with open arms, and they are not expecting perfect. They are expecting students to make mistakes. They're there to help them. And it's really up to the students to seek those resources and ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think that's excellent advice. Sometimes students need to fail a little bit in order to learn. And so we don't want to save them from all their failures. They need to have a little bit of struggle in order to have that learning moment.
Yeah, agreed, for sure.
Well, today we're excited that Dr. Andrea Malkin Brenner has joined us today on the Don't Chuck It Up podcast. Andrea, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. If you want to learn more about Dr. Andrea Malkin Brenner, her books, the talking card decks, just check out ambrenner.com. All of her information is there, and we'll include some information in the show notes as well. Thanks so much. I really appreciate you
having me. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today, but fear not, we'll be back next week with more tips and tricks to help you conquer the college application process like a boss. Until then, remember, don't chuck it up.